What's up, guys? Rick from DFS On Demand here with a preview for the Greenbriar Classic. This tournament was not played last year. It's a relatively new tournament, but completely washed out last year. You might remember this. Like 2 or 3 weeks before the tournament, this is what we were looking at. Just pretty significant devastation. The entire course basically underwater here, so wash the whole thing away. It's been a massive redo to get this course back into shape, but from what I understand, they've kept basically all the green complexes. It's mostly back to its original shape. No massive redesigns or anything like that that might affect us. Very happy to hear that they got this back in shape. So let's talk about this. It's going to be another par 70. Before we start, okay, so thanks to everyone who tweeted me. I think we had a lot of big winners last week. I had a pretty decent week, and let's look at this. Here were last week's key stats. Our #1 ranked golfer, Kyle Stanley, won the golf tournament. These key stats have worked pretty well for me this year, but I think that's the first time the #1 ranked golfer won it. We've had DJ up there a couple times where he's finished like second, third, or top 5, but I don't know if we've had, especially a guy as deep as a pool as Kyle Stanley was, who I think he was 30-1 to win it. He won it, and he was our #1 ranked golfer, and Leishman had a good showing. We obviously missed on JT and some other guys, but yeah, that was pretty cool. So good job to everyone who tweeted me, who had Stanley in their lineups. Always fun to hear. All right, let's do this. So we're going to go again with the par 4 scoring. We're going to go with that theme. And while we're talking about it, we'll look at my key stats here. So again, if you're new, I make this sheet every single week. It's with my key stats and basically spit out a score for each player. So we're going pretty much pretty straightforward here, but these were the categories that correlated to finishing position. So read a pretty good article about which stats in the past had correlated well with winning and top 10s and basically the overall finishing position. And what we came out with was good drive percentage, strokes gained approach, scrambling was a big one around the greens, strokes gained putting. Of course, since it's a par 70, we've got a few extra par 4s, so we're going with par 4 scoring. And then bogey avoidance was a big one. So I don't know if we've seen this. We probably used it at the US Open, but not sure how much we've used bogey avoidance lately. And you'll see the score that we pump out. And what you'll notice is, we'll talk about this, but it's kind of top heavy. So a lot of my top ranked players over 8,500, over 9,000, over 10,000. And I think it's going to speak to how weak this field is. So let's not waste any more time. Let's get into it. And it's very top heavy. So some of these names at 10,000 are names we would never expect to see over 10,000 before, right? Like Lingmerth, okay, he's playing well, good course history, whatever. Webb Simpson, 10,100. Kevin Kisner back in action at 10,007. And Bill Haas at 10,008. So guys are getting a significant price tag when we're not used to seeing that for them. So how are we going to deal with this? I like Patrick Reed in this spot. I like paying up for him. I think he's trending in the right direction. I think against his peers, he's a significantly better golfer than Bill Haas, Kevin Kisner, and Phil Mickelson will be chalk because he's got a home here. That's going to be the big narrative, right? But I think Reed is pretty significantly the best golfer. What I've been doing is I've been messing around with some of these little tools that I've been creating. So this is something that I'm working on that I hope to get out to you guys soon here. And basically what this is I've gathered my PGA game logs. So everything for all year. And then I'm trying to put in little visualizations and whatnot. So basically what we have here is the last 3 months. So from April 2nd until July 2nd, that was the Quicken Loans. Here's what we're looking at. And I compared 3 guys against each other because I thought it was worth taking a peek. So we've got Bill Haas, David Lingmerth, and Patrick Reed, who are 3 guys who are over $10,000, but Haas and Reed are the 2 most expensive players. And what you see is obviously everyone's trending in the right direction as you'd expect them to be to get this price tag. But Patrick Reed has been much more consistent for longer. So in this range, the average here is 54.69 for these players. Well, Patrick Reed has been above that number since the Wells Fargo, which was May 7th. So Patrick Reed significantly above average against these three players in this date range. And you can see, I mean, he's closed the last couple weeks. Okay, here we go. 75, 88 DraftKings points, 70 DraftKings points. So I don't have too much concern with Reed, other than rostering him, I think is probably going to be difficult. I think, especially if we're making a bunch of lineups, we're going to have to really go down and grab some value, which I'm not sure is there this week like it might be on other weeks. So I think Reed's the best player. When I start making rosters throughout the week, it's going to be interesting to see how much I can get of him. All right, a couple other guys. I'm not that interested in Webb Simpson at 10,100. I think Bill Haas is okay. I think Kisner's fine, and Mickelson, whatever, he'll make a lot of bogeys, or birdies, I mean, and bogeys as well, I guess. I'm just not really thrilled with anyone here. I think Reed's the best, obviously, his price indicates that, but I'm not really thrilled with anybody in the 10,000 range. Lingmerth kind of makes sense, and again, the entire world's going to be on him. The guy just led the Quicken Loans. He was the chalk, and he led for 3 rounds before finishing in a tie for 5th. He has good history here. Here we go. So Lingmerth, the last 3 years this was played, T6, T16, T9. So obviously playing really well. Really good course history. That's going to be tough to overlook for Lingmerth again this week. But as we start to get down here, in this 85 to 9,000 range, I think is more interesting. So Danny Lee, technically the defending champion. So he won this in 2015. Obviously, it wasn't played in 2016. But Danny Lee is your defending champion, and he's put some good rounds together recently, right? A T3 at the Travelers and a T22 at the Quickens. You can see that this guy has some upside here. So what is this? Top 6s in 1, 2, 3 of his last 6 tournaments, 4 top 22s, and he's made 6 straight cuts. So Danny Lee, I think, is well worth the price tag of $9,500, and it's a little scary to pay $9,500 for Danny Lee, but again, this is comparative to his peers who are really, really, really bad this week. Okay, Russ Henley is a guy that I think probably goes overlooked. So we've got Danny Lee and Keegan, who will probably be more popular. We've got Finau and Streelman, who could probably see some more ownership as well. And then we have Russ Henley sitting here at 9,300, and it's nothing too spectacular for him lately. You know, no top 25s in his last 5 events, 6 events, T26. But remember, this is a guy who won the Shell Houston Open, you know, just a few months ago, okay? Really good showing at the Masters, and he pops up really well on my key stats for this week. So here's Henley. Really good at par 4 scoring, does not make a lot of bogeys, and an excellent putter. That's going to keep you in contention on a lot of golf tournaments. And then if we look at his performance here, of course he was at the top. So the last time they played this was 2015. Henley finished in 5th place. So I think he's a guy that's probably flying under the radar a little bit, especially with the guys around him, that I'm thinking Henley is probably a pretty solid GPP play. All right, and now it gets ugly really, really fast here. I don't really like anybody in this kind of, let's call it 8,000 to 8,500. Xander Schauer at 7,900, I think is compelling just because he's made, you know, 5 straight cuts. He's a young guy who's playing for his tour card. When you're doing that and trying to earn a lot of money in a short period of time, you love these weak field events. You know, you've only got a handful of the top 25 players in this field. These are the type of events for a guy like Schauffele who's playing well. Awesome showing at the U.S. Open. Like, he has to take advantage of this, and I think he knows it. So these are the type of fields that I'm looking for these guys. And he closed with a 68 at the Quickens, which was pretty strong. You'd have to be a glutton for punishment to get back on Siwoo Kim. Again, Ollie Schneider-Johns I think is pretty interesting. So here's, the guy's only missed 2 cuts all year. He's not racking up a ton of high finishes, but again, this is probably going to be one of the weaker fields that he plays in all year long. So I'm willing to fire Ollie up here. Curtis Luck, we talked about him whenever he made his pro debut, because he was the #1 amateur in the world. I referenced him and said, okay, the last couple predecessors, Bryson DeChambeau, John Rahm, they have all kind of, when they've turned pro, they had at least some really good, strong starts to their career in the first handful of weeks. Curtis Luck is another guy who needs to make money, right? Needs to qualify and earn enough to keep his card. Faded a little bit on Sunday at the Quickens, but a T5 is obviously very inspiring, right? Give the guy a taste of victory. I actually played a lot of him last week. I had him a lot on Fantasy Draft as well. He was the min price, I think. So he has a lot of skill. And again, in a field like this, we're taking a lot of guys that we normally would never take before. Now, a guy that we take all the time, and I talk about all the time, is Stewart Cink. So 13 out of 16 made cuts this year, has not played since the U.S. Open. So a guy who's getting up there in age. Sorry, Stewart. I like when he's resting, right? So it's been 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks since he's teed it up, and he's having an excellent season. You can see all the top 25s he's posting. And not only that, but he fits this course, at least in my stats. Here we go. He's my 5th ranked golfer, okay? And the first guy who's cheaper than $9,700. So I'm going to have a lot of him. And you see why. Doesn't make a lot of bogeys. Kind of the same things that we said about Henley, where he's excellent on the greens, excellent in par 4 scoring. But Cink has that extra dimension of being great on approach shots. So 3rd in strokes gained approach. So no surprise that he demolishes the par 4s. And with this week being a par 70, and how weak the field is and how much or how little value there is, I think that Stewart Cink is going to have to be in a ton of my lineups. I don't know how I'm going to make a lot of lineups without him. Good or bad. I'll live and die with Stewart Cink, it seems like. All right. We're getting really deep here. These are guys we've never talked about, but I can't say weak field anymore. Braden Thornberry. So still an amateur, I believe. Did not turn pro. I believe he's just got another sponsor's exemption. He's in here, but what a showing at the FedEx. T4 in the only professional tournament that he's played did not take the check, right? Still an amateur. This guy's legit, right? So went to Ole Miss. He was the Haskins Award winner, which is essentially like winning the Heisman. It's the highest honor you can get in college golf. So this dude can play. I was thrilled to see this showing at the St. Jude. Now, whether he's able to back that up again in another PGA Tour event, I don't know, but I think he's worth a flyer here. All right, we're going to look at Scott Brown together. Scott Brown is a name that ever since the team event, the Zurich, I've been somewhat interested in him. So DraftKings doesn't show the Zurich. And remember that he played with Kisner, and they went to the playoff there. So they played really well for however many days, that tournament, like 5 days, I guess it was. And then he backed that up with a T12 at the Dean and DeLuca. He misses a cut at the Memorial, which is, not terrible. But if you look at just kind of like this last 4 or 5 events, because they're not showing the Zurich here, Scott Brown's been pretty good. And I'll probably want to dig a little deeper. I haven't thought too much about Scott Brown this week, but just kind of scrolling through this with you guys right now, he's kind of interesting, right? $6,800. He's shown a little bit of upside when he's played with Kisner. I'm vaguely interested. Matt Jones has made a little bit of noise over here. So the Australian, look at this. The last 2 times out, T38, T18, makes a lot of cuts, right? Some decent upside in some of these smaller events like T13 at the Valero. Actually goes out at Pebble and posts a top 25. So I don't think he's a total punt. I think he can get you a top 25 in the 6,800 range. Ricky Barnes, I tweet this every Thursday morning. Ricky Barnes is Man, it's weird. If golf tournaments only lasted Thursday morning, Ricky Barnes would be the greatest player in the history of golf. It's just unbelievable. He always runs out and shoots like 4 or 5 under, and then comes back to the field eventually. But a couple of good finishes here recently, right? So T17, T13, T22, T18. So 4 of his last 5 events, he's finished in the top 35. For a guy who's only $6,700, I think we can do much worse here. And again, closed. I always like to see what they closed with in their last rounds. And Barnes had his kind of crappy round on Saturday, but closed with a 69 on Sunday. So that's always good, and I appreciate those good vibes for a player who is able to finish the previous tournament well, as opposed to just punting it all away. Troy Merritt. Oh my God, I had a ton of Troy Merritt last week, and the reason I did is I was trying to just have him back up this T8 at the Travelers, and he was like, again, $6,600, and I was like, okay, if I can just get something out of Troy Merritt here, he's probably feeling pretty good about his game. Runs out, shoots a 66 on Thursday, unbelievable. I'm stoked. Shoots an 82. I'm not a great golfer. I don't think I could have shot an 82. I might have been able to shoot a 92, which I'm not on the PGA Tour, but 82 is really, really bad. So I don't know what I'm going to do with Merritt, and on paper it looks like, why are we even talking about this guy? He's 5 of 17 this year in cuts made. He just shot an 82 in his last round, but if we look back at it, basically what you could say is 5 of his last 6 rounds have been great. 1 has been absolutely horrendous. So I don't know. Again, I'm looking for flyers down here. I'm looking for guys that no one else is going to be on, and maybe we can catch lightning in a bottle. I thought I had that on Thursday last week with Merritt, and doesn't seem like it's going to happen. I might have just very little of him. Spencer Levine, I'm probably not expecting him to back up his top 5 or whatever he finished. Yeah, T5 at the Quickens. Probably not expecting him to back that up. Molinax, he popped up on some leaderboards recently, right? T9 at the U.S. Open, T18 at the St. Jude. I think you could do worse here. But what I do want to point out is, so DraftKings scoring, usually the min is like 66 or 6,500. This week it goes all the way down to 6,000, I think. Didn't Loop just finish? Oh, T35. I thought it was better than that. So what this says to me, the fact that we are lowering the pricing down to 6,000, I think it tells you how weak the field is. And with 6 guys priced over 10,000, I think DraftKings knows that they're probably going to have to give you guys in this price range, because how else are we going to make lineups? Cam Percy, I used to play him a lot. And Ryan Bram, he makes a lot of cuts but doesn't do much else. $6,100. Not thrilled with that. I mean, I don't love any of these guys down here, but I think it's actually worth noting how low this pricing goes. And John Daly's in the field. How about that? All right, let's wrap up with the odds check here. So again, if you're new, fantasy pricing usually correlates Vegas odds. Where it doesn't is where we might be able to find guys who are under or overpriced. The first guy who probably jumps out there, so these two right here, Tony Finau and Danny Lee, first of all, are both 25-1 to win this event. Finau is $400 cheaper, and actually they're both probably better in better positions than Webb Simpson, who's only 22-1 to win this thing. And he's 1,000 more than Finau, so that's probably not good. These guys right here, probably values. So Walker, Schauffele, and Siwoo Kim. Now, I don't have confidence in playing Siwoo Kim or Jimmy Walker, so Xander is the one who kind of jumps out there. Gary Woodland looks like he's a bit underpriced, as well as Harris English. And then, like this would show you, okay, Jeff Ogilvy's probably overpriced. So he's 8,000 and 110-1 to win. You have guys who are significantly cheaper with much better odds to win. It's probably because that good showing for Jeff Ogilvy last week that changed his scoring, but Vegas kind of knows better. So I'd probably stay away from Ogilvy just because of how badly priced he is. And then if you want value, it looks like Billy Hurley And we talked about Trey Mullinax, who could be some of the deeper values here in this range. So worth noting, I think this week is going to be a lot about roster construction. How many of these top guys can you get into a lineup? I think that 8,000 to 9,000 range is probably just going to be what decides this. We're probably going to have to get as many of those guys in there as we can. So we'll see. We'll see how the week goes and see what the sentiment around the industry is. But if you have any questions, tweet me. It's at DFS On Demand, or leave a comment below. Talk to you guys soon, and good luck.